Welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Liddy, and I'm the public defender of the 19th Judicial Circuit. We are in our Christmas motif here today, and we have a wonderful guest, Paul Nigro, who is the new circuit director for the Guardian Ad Litem program.
Right.
Yes. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The reason we did this, and when I called you, Paul, we talked about this, was that we had Vern Melvin on the show about 3-4 months ago when he had made the decision to leave Guardian Ad Litem and go with DCF. And he talked actually on the show about his replacement, which of course was you, and how wonderful you were and all of that. And I got to thinking, I should have you on and let everybody meet you, because you're kind of new on the scene for all of us. So let's, and I think it's important to talk about what exactly the Guardian Ad Litem program does, because I don't think everybody really gets that. But I want to start with you, Paul.
Sure.
Tell me, first of all, how do you get that job, this job?
The circuit director job? Well, I've been with Guardian Ad Litem for 12 years in July.
Oh,
12 years
okay.
coming up, so I've been with the program a long time.
In this circuit?
No.
Yes.
No, I actually started in Polk County.
Okay.
I was there for about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
And then I moved over to the Treasure Coast. Really, I was fortunate enough to come back here. I started as a volunteer supervisor over in the 19th Circuit, and I did that for about a year, and then I actually took a year off to stay home with my daughter, who had just been born.
Oh, great.
And go back to school. So I was a stay-at-home dad for a little while, but stayed on as a volunteer. Absolutely love this program. So
Right.
And during that time, the former assistant director and I kept in touch, and when she got promoted to circuit director in Sarasota, she encouraged me to apply. So I did. And
Now, where were you living at the time? Were you here, or were you
here
still?
here in Port
okay.
St. Lucie.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So I interviewed, and Vern and we clicked, and he brought me on.
So he did the hiring?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm a little confused. I know, it's an important, big position. I didn't know if the governor appointed you, if it was a county commission appoint.
I was appointed to this position, to circuit director, by our executive director, Alan Abramowitz. He appointed me as Vern's replacement.
Okay, that's what so Alan Abramowitz, who oversees all the Guardian Ad Litem programs in the state, correct?
Correct. He's our state director.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so what did you do before you did Guardian Ad Litem stuff, though?
I was a teacher, actually. Not for very long. I did that. I was a teacher in New Hampshire for a few years. Moved to Florida.
Okay.
And I don't know. It's kind of an interesting story, if you don't mind.
Tell us.
Because I never had any designs of being a social worker. From high school, I felt like I knew I wanted to work with kids. I enjoyed working with kids, but I wanted to be in education.
Right.
It was really appealing to me. So went to college, got my degree in education, got a job, was teaching middle school, and moved to Florida with my wife. And she was a social worker. She was a case manager, and we'd come home at night and talk about our days. And I just always felt the stories about the stuff she'd do, the kids she'd work with, the sort of adventure she was having, driving all the kids all over the state, going to court, doing all these interesting things. I'm like, this is so much more intriguing than what I'm doing right now. Not knocking education at all.
Right, no, I understand.
But it was just so much more interesting.
Well, not to interrupt, because I want you to finish, but it's kind of, when I talk about criminal law, people talk about, well, they do real estate contracts and probate and stuff. And not that, I think less of them or whatever, but, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much, we have so much action or whatever going on every day.
It was every day with her was something different. She was doing something new and exciting.
Right.
And so she, when I told her, I said, I think I want a career change. I think I want to get into social work. she's like, you don't want to do what I do. She's like, but you want to go to the Guardian Ad Litem program. And as it turned out, they happen to be hiring. So
I see.
So I did that. Started that, like I said, almost
fell
12
in
years
love
ago.
with it, yeah.
Fell in love with it. It's the only thing I could ever see myself doing.
Well, let's back up, because being an administrator of the program is a lot different than being in the trenches, going to court with the kids and all of that. So you've been on the job how long now?
As circuit director since August.
Okay.
When I left, and I was a program director for three years.
So tell me the difference. Tell me, do you still love it? Do you still have a caseload or any? No.
I do. No, I do. I have a kid that I work with, and I try to. It's a tough balance. That was really tough for me to adjust to, because I enjoyed working cases, and I enjoyed working with kids, and so I try to balance my desire to keep my mind sharp and stay in that sort of mindset of what's best for the kids, and trying to make those things happen with my role as an administrator. When I get involved in a case, I don't want it to seem like it's a micromanagement thing, but really it's just me wanting to. I still enjoy that part of the job, but it's been a tough balance. But it's a different perspective. You see the system from a much larger perspective, where you're not focused on the individual case, and you start to see how the parts really kind of interconnect.
Right.
So that's been really appealing to me, I think. I've learned certainly a lot in a short period of time about how our system works.
Now, as circuit director, is it like my position that it's a different area, isn't it, Paul? What area do you cover as the circuit director? Is it Okeechobee, Vero, Stewart, and
Yep, I have the whole 4-county area.
Okay, so Vero, Stewart, St. Lucie, and Okeechobee. Okay, so it is the same. Okay, gotcha. And how many employees do you have?
30. Yeah,
Wow.
we have 30 employees. Great team.
Okay, but you have volunteers too.
We do. We've got 380 volunteers.
That you have to oversee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so really you're talking 400 people.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, it's big. Okay, let's go back a little bit, because everybody, I can't tell you how many times people will say to me, well, you're involved with the Guardian Ad Litem program in your job, right, Diamond? And I'll say, no, peripherally, but, because in the criminal justice system, we touch in many ways a lot of organizations that don't actually impact us on a daily basis. But I don't think that most people, unless they've gotten involved, become a volunteer, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, really understand what the Guardian Ad Litem program is, how you become one, etc. So let's start with the basics. Sure. What is a Guardian Ad Litem?
So a Guardian Ad Litem is a volunteer. They're a citizen that really just wants to get involved in a child's life. That's the first step.
Right.
And our volunteers go through a pretty extensive training process.
Which is?
So we have 30 hours of pre-service training that everyone has to go through. They have to submit and obviously be cleared through a level 2 background check.
Right.
Have reliable transportation, because they're driving a lot.
Right.
And so they go through the background checks. They go through the training, which our training is we tweak it continuously. But we've been doing something in our circuit where we sort of broke it up. At one point, it was 5 straight days of classroom training, and
8
then
hours
we gave
a
them
day.
a case, 8 hours a day. It's just not a good way to train people. So
Right.
it's down to 2 days of classroom training, and we pair them up with an experienced volunteer who goes out with them on their first case, takes them to court, spends a lot of time with them working hand in hand. So it's a great hands-on training for people that are interested.
Okay, so let's back up a minute.
Sure.
How does a guardian legally, how are you appointed? How do you get involved in a case?
We only get involved after DCF removes the child. Once the case is brought to the court and the judge enters a shelter order, placing a child in care. Generally, we do not get appointed to kids who remain with a parent. Usually, we're only appointed to kids that actually are removed from from both parents.
Okay, so people understand the Department of Children and Families, if there's a complaint, an allegation that a child is abused or neglected, and help me with this because, if I say anything wrong,
No, you're right.
correct me. Abused or neglected, they can actually take the child out of the home and place them temporarily or sometimes permanently, away from the parents. So if there's an allegation of abuse or neglect, the child is taken out of the home, but then returns after a court hearing to the home, and the parents are put on. What's the?
Well, sort of. When there's a call made to the abuse hotline, which
Right.
is the first step,
Right.
And DCF investigates. When DCF investigates those allegations, if they find that it's not safe, that there's substantial risk to the child, or the
Right.
child has been harmed in some way, if they assess the situation and determine it's not safe for the child to remain in this home, then they may choose to remove. They'll go
Okay.
to court and have a shelter hearing.
Okay.
If the judge grants the shelter, that's when they appoint the guardian ad litem to the case.
Okay.
And so at that point, and it's the judicial order that gives us our authority and brings us onto the case.
Okay.
At that point, that child, every child on that case, would get an assigned volunteer.
Okay.
And the way our program is structured, the team consists of a staff attorney and a staff supervisor, and then the child's volunteer guardian ad litem.
Okay.
So the volunteer spends most of the time meeting the child, visiting them, checking up on them, making sure they have everything they need, making sure that they're safe. It's another set of eyes on the child in the community. There's a lot of people that work with the kids and with the families once a dependency case starts.
Okay, where are they placed if they're taken out of the home?
It depends. Most of our kids are with family members, and,
Okay.
and that's a good thing. We
Not necessarily the parents, an aunt or grandmother or something like that.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, most of our kids are with relatives, and but if relatives are unavailable, if there's no one that can take care of the child, then sometimes they'll go into foster care. So that might be then that looks like a number of different things. That's a traditional foster home with foster parents.
Right.
That might be at a group home. Ideally, we try to keep, they do
Yeah.
try to keep the kids here locally. We do need more foster homes. Everyone needs more foster homes,
Yeah.
but we certainly need more foster homes to try to keep our kids here. But we've got great foster parents too, so we're fortunate for the ones we have.
Okay, so if the shelter hearing is held, they're going to be placed somewhere other than back with their parents. That's when the guardian gets appointed.
Correct.
Okay, and in your world, it's on a rotating basis. You have the 300 whatever guardians, and then you just go down the line and rotate, or you say, well, this is the one for this family. I mean,
That's how we try to do it. Yeah,
Okay.
we, as much as possible, we try to make sure that we try to match the child to the guardian.
Okay.
If we have a case that comes in that has certain set of circumstances or allegations, or for example, if you have a child comes in and somewhere in the allegations, we determine that this child has extensive medical needs, we'll try to pair that child up with a guardian who might be a nurse or who might be a physician.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
We have children who come in with IEPs, with educational needs, and so we
What's
have
IEPs?
Individual education plan.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of guardians that are teachers. We actually have a lot of retired principals,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And so we'll try to pair them up. So we try to make them the best match.
Okay, so you look down your list and do that. Okay. What is the, and I know there's not any, hard and fast rule, but how long is that guardian, usually how long does it take for a case to go through the system and the children be reunited with the parents or not?
Well, what we try to, it's hard to say. I mean, the law says they have 12 months,
Right.
more or less to complete a case plan, but we obviously want to try to get those kids home as soon as it's safe to do so.
Okay, so the normal case plan when a parent, when they're taken out of the home, the parents come to court, the judge tells them, look, if you want your children back, you have to have a clean environment, you have to have a bed, you have to, whatever the case may be, get them to school on, but I know there's individual things.
There's a case plan.
Right, there's the case plan. But that case plan is normally a 12-month contract. And
it's usually a 12-month
okay,
goal. They have a 12-month goal date on it, is how they usually. Now, sometimes it's shorter depending on the nature of the situation, if this is the first removal versus, say, the third or fourth.
Yeah.
So there's factors that go into that. But, and this has changed in the last couple of years, the system used to look at case plans kind of like contracts. If you did it, you got your kids back, and that was sort of years ago. That was sort of what everyone sort of believed. Now we do try to look at it just from a perspective of what's best and when is this child going to be safe. It may be that they haven't finished everything on their case plan, but they're making good progress.
Right.
It would be safe for that child to go home, and so if it's in that child's best interest to go home sooner, then that's typically what we'll advocate for.
I got you.
So we do have families who have their children back who are still in the middle of treatment and getting help.
Okay.
So it really, we look at every case and every child as an individual situation and try to make recommendations based on just what and really everyone, there's a lot of people involved in a dependency case, what everyone feels is best for that child in that situation.
Do you have a lawyer from your agency that goes on behalf of the Guardian Ad Litem program
Yes.
as well? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's talk about the players. We have the judge.
Yep.
We have the parents. We have the child. We have the Guardian Ad Litem who's representing the best interest of the child, not necessarily the parent.
Not necessarily what they want. Well, I was going to say, not the parents either, but not necessarily what the child wants either.
Okay, what they feel is in the
what we feel is best for the child.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily what the child is, because the child's going to want to go home.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've very rarely ever had a child tell me, you talk to a child and you ask them what you want, and we do. We do every time we visit our child, and every time before we go to court, we always ask the child, what do you want? What would you like us to tell the judge for you? And by and large, they all say, I want to go home. And I think Vern mentioned that too when he was on before. That's just what kids want. Home is where their parents are, no matter what happened.
Right.
But sometimes it's just not best at that time, and so that's the call that we try to make.
Okay. So you've got the guardian, and then there's an attorney representing the program.
Right.
Okay. Now, does obviously the attorney gets to advocate and talk about what they feel is important and, what kind of plan there should be and that kind of thing. But does the Guardian Ad Litem actually get to speak in court?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
And, do you train them for that?
We try our best. It's intimidating. I mean, honestly, when I have to testify in court, I still get nervous, sometimes. So,
sure.
But yeah, we do try to train them. We talk to them in the pre-service training about what they can expect and how to prepare. But we really leave a lot of that to the team. They have a supervisor and they have the attorney that works with them. So before any time they go to court, we try to have our teams, our attorneys in particular, really train them and go over, here's what you can expect, here's what I'm going to ask you, here's what you need to prepare for this hearing. So we try to give them everything they need to be ready.
Right. Now, if someone out there is watching the show and thinks, I'd like to volunteer, I'd like to do this, they're obviously, we know what their job is, but what does that entail? Does that entail seeing the child every day, seeing the child once a week, going to school? What's the minimum? And then, of course, I'm sure there's some that just take their duties to the max, and probably most of them do, or they wouldn't be involved in the first place. But what is their job? What are their job duties?
Well, no,
albeit for free, right?
It's right. No, it's incredible what our volunteers do. But at a minimum, we ask our volunteers to go visit the child at least once every 30 days.
Okay.
Our standards say once a month, but we encourage them to see him every 30 days. Because you could go on the 1st of June and the last day of July.
Right.
You've met your minimum, but really 2 months have gone by where you haven't seen that child.
Right. Right.
Now, a lot of our guardians they'll see their kids more than once a
Yeah.
month, but that's the minimum. And it depends on what's going on in the case too,
Right.
obviously. They do need to go to court anytime there's hearings, and usually by the time we get involved, you've got your few procedural hearings. Most of our cases do result in the parents agreeing to some kind of case plan,
Right.
because the goal is to help them, and I hope they understand that, and I think our teams and case management do a good job of making sure they do, and the parent attorneys as well.
And again, I'm interrupting
Sure.
you, but I have these burning questions. Have you ever had a situation where the parent says, "No, not going to enter a plan. You keep Johnny"?
We've had plenty of situations where they don't agree to a case plan, and usually they move on to an adjudicatory hearing, and case, DCF, CLS has to present their case. The judge has to make a finding. Very rarely do we ever have them say, "I'm not going to do a case plan, and I don't want the child back. You keep them." Unfortunately, that has happened at times.
Has it happened?
It does
Okay.
happen.
And what do you do then?
That's a tough one. We're actually, there's a lot of people right now working on a work group through the St. Lucie County Roundtable on how to prevent lockouts. The term we use is lockout. And we have it happen a lot. Usually it's at the mental health centers or DJJ.
Okay.
If a child gets taken into custody, goes to Department of Juvenile Justice, and then when they call and say, "Hey, we're ready to release your child, come get him," the parent says, "No, he's yours." They go to DCF. So that, and the same thing when child is freed from a Baker Act and there's no caregiver that will come and take them, then they're turned over to DCF.
Right.
So it's unfortunate. We try to engage the families as often as possible. We try to get them all the help that they need, because we don't want to see a family split up like that. We're really trying to work with the community to engage those families earlier, because we know those situations, outside of some very extreme cases, they didn't get to that point overnight. That's been a build-up. There's been challenges along the way, and maybe it's the family didn't realize resources were available. I think there's a stigma about calling and asking the state for help, because I think, unfortunately, the assumption is DCF, if you ask DCF for help, they're going to take your kid and then help you later, and that's really not the case.
No.
But we don't have too many of those. I want to say we had something like 8 overall. Consider
how many?
we have about
8
1,000 kids in care.
Okay.
So it's a small percentage.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because those are the toughest cases.
Well, does it, out of those 8, were any of them reunited with their family?
A few. Yeah.
Okay.
Some,
And the ones that you just are a lockout and you can't resolve, they go into foster care, huh?
unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully we can find a relative or another family member that'll step in and want to take care of them. If they're, depending on their age, because we have some kids that are, 17,
Right.
16, 17, and they don't want to necessarily go home.
Right.
And so we can help them, prepare them to become adults. We get them life skills training and
Wow.
job coaching. They have a dedicated team to work with them. Some of our kids that do come in that way, they end up being incredibly successful, on their own. So.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. Well, that gives you hope. That gives,
does.
Yeah, because otherwise you just, oh wow. Okay, how many of the 1,000? What percentage then enter into a case plan and fail, and the court? Gosh, I used to do this work. Give me a second.
Sure.
It's called the civil death penalty, as we used to call it.
Termination of parental rights.
Yeah. Termination of parental
Yeah.
rights. How many of those parents, not including the
Right.
8, of the 92, 992 left, how many of those they actually terminate their parental rights? What's the average?
I don't have an exact number.
No, I know. What's the average?
It doesn't happen often.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
1%, 2%?
Probably a little higher, but I would say I'm going to totally ballpark this, so I could be off maybe 5%,
Okay.
10%, something
Okay.
like that. It's not It's fortunately
It's not the norm,
it's not
for
the norm.
sure.
No, it's not. And, most of our kids do end up being reunified with their family. Some take a little longer than others. Some don't. Some go home very early on in the process. We do have, on any given day, a handful of cases that are sort of in that TPR phase. But, the families have, we've reunified kids on the eve of the termination trial. So
Wow.
it's not just once that petition is filed, that's it, and we stop working with the family. The system is built to try to help these families come back together.
Well, I liken it as we speak kind of to our diversion courts in criminal, the criminal arena, mental health court, drug court. They are labor intensive. It takes a village to help, It takes a whole group to sit down and work with these parents and stuff, but it's forgiving in many instances. In other words, it sounds to me, because I know that in diversion courts, if you violate, let's say you're in drug court for possession of drugs, and so you're not supposed to smoke pot anymore, or drink or whatever, and you have a dirty urine. Well, that doesn't necessarily kick you out of the court. They work with you, see if you just had a relapse. You think you can try better next time. And now after 2 or 3 failures, they're going to kick you out, and the heck with you. But it sounds to me that it's very much like that in dependency court too.
It is. The whole system really is meant to be rehabilitative.
Right.
And
Right.
the termination parental rights is the most extreme action that we can take.
Right.
And it's never taken lightly. Because like you said, it's essentially the civil death penalty. It's as if this child was never born to this parent. And it's tragic, and at the same time, we never take it lightly. It's always the most serious decision we ever have to make in a case. But when we do have to make it, the focus then becomes, let's find this child a forever family, and that's something that you don't feel good that you got there, but if you're there and you had to be there and it was the right thing to do, then you at least know let's find great families for these kids, and we do. We have a great the system here in general has a great track record with that. So
well, it's got to be no wonder you love it. It's got to be so rewarding.
As much as it is. We had last month was National Adoption Month, and so there was a lot of adoptions, and it's always it's fun to go and you see these kids. It was a tragic road to get there, but it's got a happy ending for them.
Right. Believe it or not, as I told you when I called you and invited you, we got about 1 minute left.
I know, I've been watching the timer, and I'm like, this is the fastest 30 minutes of my life.
Oh, I'm telling you. Let's end, though. Obviously, you always need more guardians, right? So if someone's interested, they can call you or your office at what's the number?
So our number is 772-785-5804.
Okay, and they just say, I want to become a guardian. Who do I talk to?
Absolutely, yeah. They just say, I'm interested in learning more about the program. It's a totally no pressure thing. They can come in. We've got plenty of material on our website if they want to go to guardianadlitem.org. If they want to talk to one of our recruiters, we're happy to meet with people and give them information. It's very much a no-pressure situation. We want to make sure that we're a good fit for them. We want to make sure they're a good fit for our kids, too. So,
good deal. Well, happy holidays, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.